Good day, folks, and welcome to the Anorak Review Show with your host, the Anorak. Today we're looking at an interesting band, one that I'm sure most people haven't known all that much about, but have probably heard a song or two of theirs for some while ago. That being the 80s prog pop supergroup Asia. There seem to be quite a few bands out there named after continents. Asia, Europe, America. I wonder if there's a band out there that's called, I don't know, Africa, Oceania, or Antarctica. Anyways, I call Asia a supergroup mainly because most of their members were of other certain bands at the time, especially the original founding members. Formed in 1981 by guitarist Steve Howe from Yes, the late great bassist and vocalist John Wetton from King Crimson, drummer Carl Palmer of Atomic Rooster and Emerson Lake and Palmer, and keyboardist Jeff Downes of Yes and Buggles. At first one might think that Asia is in some way that they are a spiritual successor to the Buggles duo, since their debut album was released a year after Buggles' second and last album, Adventures in Modern Recording. Well, that wouldn't entirely be true. Not only did Asia's first album came out 4 months after Adventures in Recording did, but Jeff apparently left on the very day they were supposed to begin proper recording sessions just to join Asia. Plus, the recordings for their first album would have been wrapped up by the time the Buggles album would eventually be released. Plus, the other half of Buggles, Trevor Horn, never became a member of Asia. Nevertheless, Asia were, and someday are, still tied in with Yes as much as Buggles were, with Steve, Jeff and Trevor being members of Yes for some time. Or in the case of Steve and Jeff, they still are. But those are stories for another time. For now though, anyways, released 40 years ago, in March 1982, this is Asia by Asia. And the cover itself is pretty good. In case you couldn't really tell, this was illustrated by the fantastic Roger Dean, who many of you would know for doing most of the Yes album covers, and of course he would do most of the covers for Asia. And just if you looked at some of his artwork online or in several of the Yes albums or other bands, you'll distinctly recognize his artwork and his art style, and it's absolutely beautiful, combining kind of modernizations of old fantasy tropes like weird landscapes with fantastical creatures like dragons and wyverns and all sorts of fantastical stuff. In fact, at one point there was apparently a lawsuit between Roger Dean and the 2009 Avatar movie because it apparently copied some ideas from his kind of tropes from his artwork, such as these famous Ark Mountain things. But I don't know if that lawsuit went anywhere or not, but nonetheless, it was still must have been some kind of flattery and an influence nonetheless, because his artwork is always gorgeous in my opinion, and this cover is just no exception. Showing basically a water serpent or a sea serpent, and presumably a pearl or an orb in it. It's very simple. It's not as grandiose as some of his other album covers, but it's still pretty good and it's still pretty epic in its own way. So anyway, and as for the logo itself, it's a pretty nifty design. It's not as bulby like the Yes logo, but it's still distinct in its own right, basically forming some form of pyramid with the letters and a little triangle at the top. So it's a very cool way and a very distinct motif and a very distinct font. So I gotta say absolute kudos on the cover alone. Up there with Hypnosis as one of my favourite cover designs. If I ever formed a band, I would get a guy like him to do my album covers. So, with that out of the way, let's take a look at the music itself, and see for ourselves if it lives up to the cover. We begin the album with Heat of the Moment. And just like last time, this is a good song to start up things. Being the most well-known of Asia songs and their first single, yet ironically, this was the last song written for the album. John Kalodner, an executive of Geffen Records, the label that distributed Asia's albums at the time, asked the band sometime during the production if they would make a single that would sell. And sell, it sure would. John Wetton came up with the chorus, while Jeff came up with the verses, and it soon became the song we know today. I guess sometimes executives can be good every now and then. Not all the time, but still, mind you. Anyway, starting right away with a grungy rhythm from Steve Howe's guitars, Wetton comes in singing about never meaning to treat someone so badly, a fall from grace, remembering and recalling times of love together, dancing and singing songs unsung. The way the verses sound so remind me a bit of those in Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles. Again, kinda expected since Jeff Downes composed both songs. Then the chorus kicks in and it's just brilliant. They transition together so seamlessly, so kudos there. In a later verse, there's a line of, "You catch the pearl and ride the dragon's wing," which is obviously a reference to the cover itself, so nice touch there. In the middle-late section, we get some of Jeff's sweet synth licks, along with a subtle koto from Steve, which is an interesting choice there. The song could be about how intense the feeling of love can be at first, but over time it soon wears off as life flashes us by. We all remember our ambitions from our teenage years. Next is Only Time Will Tell, the second track, second single, and possibly one of my favorite songs from Asia. Just from how epic it sounds right off from the get-go. At first we get a little synth melody, then it turns into this big brass-like sound accompanied by drum rolls, cowbells, and an awesome guitar. Just immediately lost for words right there. Wetton's verses are also very beautiful too, starting out with a lone keyboard, then it redevelops thereon as John comes to realize what kind of woman he's been falling for. Then the chorus written by Jeff is just as epic, where the harmonic backing vocals singing metaphors such as the sun crossing the skies and tears tiding over, reflecting the deceptive nature of the subject, while our singer declares that only time itself will determine the victor, who will claim the victory, who will truly make it after the breakup. This is a song of confidence, self-empowerment, facing the future, and seeing things for what they truly are. Whenever I listen to the song, I just feel exhilarated and enlightened, like I just launched to the top of the freaking world or something. Sure, it may seem a bit cheesy and over the top like many 80s rock songs, but it's the good kind of cheese. The awesome, energy-inducing kind of cheese. You guys ever heard of the genre symphonic rock? Well, this song is harmonic rock, and this song alone just stands the test of time. After that is Soul Survivor. Continuing a bit of the bombastic proggy music, this track is very reminiscent of Yes, blatantly in fact, so such a thing could easily be mistaken for something from that band, but it doesn't disparage the quality of this in any way possible. The lyrics also have this somewhat action fantasy vibe to them, again very much like Yes, this being about a soul survivor riding the hounds of hell and struggling through the darkness and sorrow. Partway through the song we get a really good instrumental bridge section where the guitars and synth play this ominous, intense emotional mood before transitioning back to Wheaton as he sings some more about rising from the wreckage like a phoenix. A dark phoenix, if you will. Perhaps this character was some kind of were kind of a soldier in a Middle-earth style battle or war, and he's the only survivor of it. Simple, but very likely. The prog rock influences, especially from Yes, are very strong here, but at the same time, it's still its own thing. And I imagine something like this may have inspired, or at least influenced, a good chunk of the Yes album that would come over a year and a half later, 90125 from 1986, even if neither Jeff nor Steve were part of Yes back then anymore, having left after the previous album Drama from 1980. Then we have One Step Closer. One step closer to the edge, and we're about to break. Got that reference out of the way, now for this totally different song. And totally different this actually kind of is. Co-written between John Wetton and Steve Howe, this is much lighter than the previous songs, with Wetton singing about a constant friend and lover named Loneliness, who's also a fiancé. So Wetton tries to catch the eye of another individual just to converse with, one step at a time closer to actually being with someone, even if they never met before. And hopefully they won't mind being in a threesome with Loneliness. The choruses seem to have a bit of a call and response, with every closer than we are or closer than before, we get a bit of that brass synth that we're kind of accustomed to at this point. And there's a brief guitar solo from Steve, which helps enhance that very, very happy-ish kind of carefree tone and mood of the song. I could imagine this being a potential fourth single from the album. I may not have as much to say regarding this particular song, but it's still fine as it is. Some may see it as a bit of filler, but I think it's fine. Side 1 ends with Time Again, a real dramatic tune from the get-go with this eerie, almost threateningly dark guitar riff, then a brief moment of synth clarity, and then back to the guitars, then forth with some drum rolls, and then into this galloping rhythm for most of the song, like horses rushing into war. This is the only song in this album to be credited to all four members, and boy, you can tell they put their all into this. Carl Palmer's drums do strangely well at coming in and out, and with some of the little bits of piano piece every now and then, it does sound like something out of the heyday of ELP. Here, Wetton sings about how sometimes nothing's guaranteed in fate, always pushing yet never satisfied, giving yet never being given something in return. And sometimes, even if we're taught to learn from something, we never truly learn. And the mistakes keep repeating over and over and over, time and time again. It's a vicious cycle, and this is indeed a vicious song cycle. And the way it kind of rolls out into this sudden conclusion, it's a good way to close out the first half of the album.